comes a year after torrential rains, and the collapse of a dam left entire neighborhoods submerged in water. The Borno state government has provided support to local communities through relief camps, food aid, and cash handouts. However, the government has also begun the reconstructing of the dam and dike system at Alau, which initially caused the flooding. The dam, which was built in 1986, has been difficult to maintain due to the Boko Haram Islamist group's insurgency in the area. Around 1,000 troops from 9 SADC countries, including 650 from Zambia, are taking part in a humanitarian exercise and medical outreach in drought-hit districts. The Operation SADC Blue Lugwasho 2025 is part of the bloc's rotating Standing Aviation Committee's activities. Zambia's Acting Defence Minister Brenda Tamba has called it a key investment in regional readiness, especially against climate-related challenges.
This exercise is a practical manifestation of the peace and security agreements to which Zambia is deeply committed. These include the SADC Protocol on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation, the African Union's Peace and Security Architecture, and the United Nations Charter. We firmly believe in an African region at peace with itself.
Childhood overweight and obesity are now a global crisis, with 1 in 5 school-aged children and adolescents aged 15 to 19 years living with overweight and 1 in 20 children under 5. A report by UNICEF reveals that while underweight prevalence among children aged 5 to 19 has declined since the year 2000, obesity rates have increased from 3 to 9%. And finally, the authorities in Mexico say at least 3 people have been killed and about 70 injured when a gas truck exploded. The vehicle blew up next to an elevated section of the road in a densely populated part of Mexico City. The BBC's Will Grant has the story.
Mobile phone footage shows the moment the gas tanker exploded, sending huge flames and plumes of smoke into the sky on a highway overpass in the south of the Mexican capital. The emergency services were on the scene quickly and took dozens of injured people to nearby hospitals. At least 19 are said to be in a serious condition. The city's mayor, Clara Brugada, called the incident an emergency, saying that 18 vehicles had burned in the explosion and that an investigation into the incident was underway.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo-Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headlines. South Africa's Springbok women face off with their nemesis New Zealand, having already reached their primary objective. South African sprinter Bayanda Walaza will not take part in the World Athletics Championships. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 6 minutes after 12 p.m. Central African Time. This is Africa Update on Channel Africa. We are broadcasting live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, South Africa. We are on DSTV Audio Bouquet Channel 802, on OpenView on Channel 628, and you can live stream us on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Google and Apple Play stores. There are several platforms where you and I can engage over the next hour. On X, Instagram and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. And please do remember that as we engage and share our comments and ask our questions, to use the hashtag Africa Update. That's hashtag Africa Update.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
And so today's question for you is a delicious one. And we're actually discussing it during the throw forward with Balisa and Benjamin. And what do you think about this? The South African Constitutional Court has delivered a judgment on whether men can assume the surname of the woman after marriage. Now, we know in many traditional cultures, it is the woman who marries into the family of the man and thus assumes the man's surname. So now, as a man, would you take your wife's surname? And as a woman, would you demand that your husband take on your surname, and why? Do let us know if this is something that you are comfortable with, or are you thinking that why has it taken so long, that this has been discriminatory right from the beginning? Also, let us know where you are writing to us from, because we do understand, obviously, different cultures, different backgrounds, different regions have various practices. So a lot of these decisions are culturally based on what is the norm in your society. So let's hear from the men this afternoon. Would you take on your wife's surname? And if you were a woman, would you insist and demand that the husband takes on your surname instead of your own? And who knows, there may be some very valid reasons why you choose what you choose. So do enlighten us, let us know, because context is everything, right? Context is everything. So that's the question for today. Share your thoughts on Channel Africa's social media platforms. On X and Instagram, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, you'll find us at Channel Africa, or you can just send us your comments and voice notes. Our WhatsApp number is +27 63 406 9126. That's +27 63 406 9126. That is our question of engagement for this afternoon, and I cannot wait to hear your responses. It's gone 9 minutes after 12.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Our first stop this afternoon is Ghana. The country has agreed to accept West African nationals who have been deported from the United States, with 14 having already arrived in the country. Now, at a press briefing late on Wednesday, President John Dramani Mahama told reporters that 14 deportees, including Nigerians and one Gambian, arrived in Ghana, and the government facilitated their return to their home countries. For more, we're now joined on the line by our correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena Agbeta. Eric, a very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us.
Glad to join as well, Tammy.
So can you confirm if the 14 deportees have already left Ghana, and perhaps even before that? It's quite clear that Ghana is just a thoroughfare, that it's a pit stop to future destinations. Can you give us clarity on the actual arrangement between the United States and Ghana?
I think you've rightly stated that it's looking more and more like we're a pit stop and not really a place of final destination in terms of what is expected. But what we know from what the president has been saying is that the U.S. government reached out to us asking that they deport African nationals here. We know that the government and the President Trump has been seeking to remove illegal migrants, as they call them, or term them, out of their country's jurisdiction, and have been looking for destination points. Nigeria, they've tried to get access to that particular land because they say there are a number of Nigerians there as well, but the Nigerian government has not been cooperative. And for Ghana, our government has been cooperative, and the agreement reached is that we can only do West African nationals because West African nationals do not need a visa to make their way into the country. All they require is just to pack their bags and then they can come here. And so that makes, in terms of travel arrangement and the various bottlenecks that could come up as a result of these deportations, that eliminates that with immediate effect. And so it meant that West African nationals could come here very easily. But what we do not know in terms of the full arrangement is whether or not officially we're just going to serve as a pit stop for these West African nationals who will be coming here, because 14 have arrived. And from what the president told us yesterday, when I was there physically present as well, he said that of that number, 13 are Nigerians, and facilitation processes has been underway and has completed, and they've been repatriated to their home countries. But there's one Gambian who currently there are documentation processes underway for that Gambian as well to be returned home. And that's what we know in terms of the arrangement. What this also suggests is that there could be a lot more of such West African nationals who could be coming through, because now we understand it is an agreement which has been put in place, and so the expectation will be that there will be a lot more, and perhaps we'll be getting a bit more in terms of explanation as to what the fine details of these arrangements is, or this agreement is, because we know in 2016 we received 2 Guantanamo Bay detainees who had served 14 years in terms of detention. They were returned, and we received in excess of $300,000 for their presence here for 2 years. And so questions are being asked as to whether or not there are financial packages associated with this agreement which we've reached with the U.S. as well. We know the president didn't make those disclosures, and these are questions that are already coming up, and we'll be seeking to get answers to as well, Tammy.
And that was, quite naturally my next question, Eric, that what's in it for Ghana? Why is Ghana, amiable to opening up its shores as the seeming pit stop?
Well, I mean, a lot of things could arise. For one, the president sought to explain that in terms of our relations with the U.S., he felt a bit disappointed that Ghana and the U.S. continues to enjoy very breeze through, if I can term it that, diplomatic ties. It's been very rock solid for quite a while. It's why in our history in the Fourth Republic, we've had 2 former U.S. presidents touch down, and when Kamala Harris decided to come around on an African visit, Ghana was one of the first destination points as well. It just presupposes that our ties with the U.S. has been quite rock solid, and so when such agreements come around, more often than not, we're ever present to go to the negotiation table, and if it doesn't bother on national security, we're quite open to receive that. We have a lot of trade deals as well with the U.S., but he was a bit disappointed that we were slapped with tariffs amongst many other things. But he says that it didn't stop the negotiations because of, despite the concerns that he's had that was seemingly being slapped with tariffs and being put on a watch list of countries which could receive visa bans, we continue as a country to be open to the U.S. in terms of negotiations and being forward-looking as to what our diplomatic ties can bring us. But again, we do not know whether or not there is monetary value attached to these persons who are coming through. And so those are the questions that we will seek to find out. But as to whether or not this becomes a gateway through which we begin to negotiate away some of the tariffs which have been slapped on us, perhaps that's the angle where the government is seeking to look at this from. But he made a disclosure first of yesterday, and quite surprisingly, we hadn't had or caught wind of this just as yet. And so we'll wait to see whether or not there is some benefit to all of this. And then possibly we can be able to begin to finalize on some of these things. Because outside of whether or not there are financial benefits, there is a question of whether or not this agreement was ratified by Parliament. And I mentioned the 2016 Guantanamo Bay agreement, which we had with the U.S. Someone took that matter to the country's Supreme Court, and the court ruled that the agreement without parliamentary approval was not binding on us, and so it had to go to Parliament for ratification. That will come up again because the questions will be asked as to whether or not this agreement has to go to Parliament for ratification, and that's what we're expecting at any moment from now in terms of the conversations which will come forward as well.
Another thing, Eric, is President Mahama didn't specify a cap on how many deportees Ghana would actually be accepting. But has government given any indication around the numbers?
We're expecting the numbers could go up. 14 is what appears to be the first batch. This, I believe, will be closely tied to as well the U.S. efforts to remove persons they term illegal migrants, because the agreement, per what we understand, is strictly West African nationals. As and when these illegal migrants are being deported and West African nationals are identified, then that agreement will come into force, and then West African nationals will be on board headed towards Ghana. And so that is all dependent on the persons being deported from the U.S., what the numbers are, and out of that number, how many of them our West African nationals, and then we will get to see whether or not the numbers, as we've seen, the 14 will go up. But for now, in terms of estimates, we're expecting that number will go up even as the U.S. continues with the efforts towards removing illegal migrants.
It would also be interesting, Eric, to find out what the parameters of responsibilities are, between the United States and Ghana. And I wonder if Ghana is also helping with the reintegration and the reunification process for these deportees, ensuring that they are able to rejoin their families and rebuild their lives. Is there an understanding of the scope of Ghana's involvement?
Well, Tammy, the scope is a bit hazy as at now because just gleaning from what the president disclosed yesterday, he says the 14 have arrived, doesn't mention whether or not there are packages associated with their arrival, which is expected to help them reintegrate with their families. With the Guantanamo Bay detainees, they had been detained for 14 years. There are clear links to terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, which was the basis for their detention, was not clearly identified, which meant that when they were being returned, it suggested that they had been detained illegally. And so there was some package associated with their repatriation into Ghana and to allow them easily reintegrate. These are persons who have been termed as illegal migrants and are being deported. And from what we understand in terms of these deportation policies, more often than not, these persons are just sometimes just with what they are wearing brought back into the countries where they are supposed to be headed, where they do not take any property whatsoever. If that is the arrangement which is being gone by in terms of this agreement, then it presupposes that there are no financial packages to allow them reintegrate into Ghana. But we also understand that these persons are not being reintegrated into Ghana. They are being taken to their home countries. And from where I sit, the expectation is not that the Ghanaian government will include packages to allow them reintegrate into their respective countries. And so that continues to be a very sketchy aspect in terms of this agreement. And we'll get the fine details when the Foreign Affairs Minister makes himself available for a lot more questions, because this is gathering.
And there certainly are still a lot of questions that need answers. But Eric Mawena Egbeta, thank you so much for that comprehensive update this afternoon. Much appreciated. Thank you. That's correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena Egbeta. He takes us to 21 minutes after 12 p.m. Central African time. In just a moment, we'll be focusing on M23 and the DIRCO in South Africa.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It is 21 minutes after 12 p.m. Central African time. Now, the South African government faces sharp criticism. This is after representatives of the sanctioned M23 rebel group attended a peace and security dialogue in Magaliesburg in Gauteng, South Africa, without proper vetting. The Thabo Mbeki Foundation hosted the event, which aimed to address conflicts across Africa. The presence of M23, just months after 14 South African soldiers were killed in clashes with the group in Goma, has sparked outrage. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola insists that the government was unaware of the M23's attendance, stating that his department did not review the guest list. Joining us to discuss this further is Professor of International and Diplomacy Studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, Anthony van Nieuwkerk. A very good afternoon to you, so welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to clarify this matter with you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for your time. So let's perhaps start with an understanding of whether DIRCO knew that the M23 were going to be in attendance at the summit.
Yeah, let me see if I can give you a sort of a crisp perspective. The Thabo Mbeki Foundation organized a 4-day dialogue, which took place last week in Mount Grace, Magalies. and I was part of the organizing team. We invited African stakeholders who are involved in peace processes and in conflict across several regions in Africa, including the Sahel, the Horn of Africa, the Great Lakes region, northern Mozambique. And they all came together over 4 days to have a dialogue about what can be done to promote peace instead of war. We also invited a delegation of Congolese from government, opposition parties, politicians, church leaders, academics, civil society activists, and so on. Many of them accepted and came. Some didn't accept and didn't come. In order for this delegation, which included a spokesperson of the M23, in order for them to arrive at the dialogue in Magalies, we had to work very closely with the Department of Home Affairs, Foreign Affairs, Defense, and Intelligence to make sure that they get passage and visas, which they did, and they arrived, and we had a very critical dialogue with all of them, and they left soon thereafter.
The main question then, once again, did DIRCO know that the M23 were going to be attending the summit?
We couldn't invite the delegation of Congolese, including the M23 spokesperson, without the assistance of DIRCO, who facilitated visas so that they can be legally in the country. And this is precisely what happened.
And so why is there this conflict? Because now clearly DIRCO is saying that they had no idea that they were here. And given the background and the recent, killing of 14 South African soldiers, that this is not something that they would have welcomed. How did you get wind of their unhappiness of the situation?
There are journalists and some parts of the media who portray the dialogue as an outrage, as if DIRCO didn't know, as if the foreign minister who came to speak to us at the dialogue didn't know what was going on. This is all a form of misinformation because there's tension in the Congo between government and opposition. The opposition arrived for the dialogue. Government didn't want to participate in the dialogue. This is the Tshisekedi sort of oriented group. And they used media and journalists to spread this kind of news, which you are repeating now by saying there's outrage and that DIRCO didn't know. It's simply not true. When we organized the visit, we knew that there was going to be a tense moment, and we extended the invitation to all stakeholders in Congo. In fact, after the event, we extended another invitation for those who missed the dialogue by their own choice for a follow-up workshop in a smaller setting to hear the other side of the story, so-called. And again, we'll make sure that those who arrive for the follow-up workshop will be legitimate, will have visas, and will be informed. We will inform the government of the day, which is DIRCO, and the presidency of the situation. Let me add another sentence. The President's special envoy to the Great Lakes region, Mr. Jeff Radebe, was at the dialogue to hear the Congolese and understand why there's a conflict between these various groups. And we had a very sensitive and a very delicate but also very robust discussion and arguments with the Congolese, and we ended up asking them what it is that they want from the South Africans or any other mediator to assist in opening up a pathway to peace, because we were very aware of the American and the Gulf states who are also trying to push for peace processes. And all of this formed part of a legitimate dialogue.
Is M23 banned or barred in South Africa officially?
No. The Americans have declared them a terror organization. The South African government have not. If they had, they would have told us that they couldn't participate in the dialogue. There are elements, there are individuals associated with the M23 rebel group who are also sanctioned by the Americans. They didn't come, and we didn't speak to them.
So what then is the way forward now? And why was it important for you as the Thabo Mbeki Foundation to have M23 represented in these dialogues?
M23 is one of several groups in the Congo, in the DRC, opposed to the rule of President Tshisekedi of the DRC, and they've been involved in violent clashes over many months and years, in fact. And they came to talk to the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, all these various stakeholders, because President Mbeki himself in 2002 was able to mediate a peace deal, an inter-Congolese dialogue, and the Sun City talks that ended in a peace deal, the so-called Pretoria Accord, which allowed the Congolese to implement a new constitution, elections, and move on the way of peace. The accord, unfortunately, was not implemented fully and unraveled over a period of time. The Congolese are now asking whether this process can be repeated, and that's why they came to the dialogue. And I think in the dialogue we said, all the participants, a wide range of African mediators, academics, and civil society activists, listened to the Congolese and said, but if you can organize yourselves internally to know what it is you want from external supporters, we can then have another or a follow-up conversation. The point I think we reached in the dialogue is it doesn't make much sense for Africans to ask outsiders, such as Americans or the Qataris or the Europeans or any other, to lead in a peace process. Peace will come to the Congo if it is led by the Congolese themselves on all sides. And I think we wanted to provide a platform for this kind of conversation to take place, which indeed happened.
Let's establish some of the facts based on this conversation. Yes, we know that M23 has not been officially banned in the country. South Africa hasn't declared them, they haven't put any sanctions against them. They came in. The second bit is the fact that they did have official documents and they were issued with travel documents that allowed them to enter the country. So you're saying that they went through all the diplomatic checks and balances that needed to happen. And my question based on these two is, what then is the basis of the disenchantment from DIRCO? And what is the way forward in resolving this or finding conclusion to that?
I think your summary is spot on. You get all the essential elements right, and thank you for that. There is no disagreement between DIRCO and the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. I spoke to the DIRCO spokesperson, and I reached out and we had a conversation about whether there is a misunderstanding between the foundation and the department. There isn't. We speak the same language. We're agreed on the essentials, the way that you've just summarized them. So there's no need for us to make any way forward with DIRCO. In fact, we're going to participate in follow-up conversations around peace processes, not only in the Congo, but also in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, and elsewhere on the continent, working with DIRCO as a very close partner of the foundation.
All right, we're going to leave it at that for this afternoon. We thank you very much for your time, Professor.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. That's a Professor of International and Diplomacy Studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, Anthony van Nieuwkerk. He takes us to exactly 12:30 Central African Time as we make our way to the news desk for the latest headlines with Jwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon. Making headlines, a spokesperson for the ruling Malawi Congress Party, Dr. Jesse Kwabila, says he's confident his party will win the upcoming elections. The country heads to the polls next week to elect a new president and 229 parliament members with several challenges. The head of the health department in South Africa's Eastern Cape province, Dr. Rolene Wagner, says the province urgently needs a multi-pronged approach to prevent young children dying from acute malnutrition-related complications. And finally, the authorities in Mexico say at least 3 people have been killed and about 70 injured when a gas truck exploded. I will have details on these and other stories at 1 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
In our sports update, we kick off with rugby news. South Africa's Springbok women have already reached their primary objective to reach the quarterfinals of the Women's Rugby World Cup in England and will go into the play-off against New Zealand's Black Ferns at Sandy Park on Saturday with no fear of failure. Instead, according to Bok women assistant coach Lorianne Johannes Haupt, it will be a celebration of their journey and with a determined mindset to add even more milestones to their list of achievements.
We're definitely going to relish the opportunity. We were afforded the opportunity to play 3 top 4 nations, which is massive for not only for now but for the future of our game. We know where we ultimately want to go post this World Cup, but for now it's really exciting for us. Just to be able to play the Black Ferns is special, and we know that they're going to bring a dynamic, real good, skillful game, and expansive too. So it's a good opportunity for us to actually see where we are against it.
On to cricket news, veteran South African Proteas women all-rounder Marizanne Kapp says retirement could not be further from her mind as she prepares to take part in her 50th over World Cup starting later this month. Now, a seasoned 35-year-old says she's not yet ready to leave the big stage.
I don't know. I'm still enjoying my cricket at the moment. Definitely not thinking of retiring. I know people speak about your age or whatever, but I still feel good. I feel like I'm still performing. ODI cricket is definitely my favourite format. So for now, I'm just going to enjoy every moment, not thinking too far ahead. Just one day I'll have to make that decision, but for now, I'm still playing.
Let's end with athletics. South African sprinter Bayanda Walaza has been withdrawn from the national team for the World Athletics Championship starting in Tokyo this weekend. Following a comprehensive medical evaluation, Athletics South Africa has determined that Walaza's hamstring injury sustained during his race at the Diamond League final in Zurich last month will prevent him from participating in the championships. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lengwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon. I'm Mosito Zuma. In your business news this hour, South Africa's current account deficit widened to 1.1% of gross domestic product, which is the GDP, in the second quarter of 2025 from a revised 0.6% deficit in the first quarter. Now, in the rand terms, the current account deficit rose to $4.72 billion from a revised $2.78 billion in the first 3 months of the year. According to the South African Reserve Bank, the trade surplus narrowed to $10.10 billion in April to June from $12.4 billion in January to March, as the value of goods exports decreased more than that of imports. South African Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Dean Macpherson says he also has questions about the $45 million oxygen plant tender awarded by the Independent Development Trust. He was asked for an update on the saga during question time to economics cluster ministers in the National Assembly. The department appointed an audit firm to investigate allegations of fraud and corruption around the tender process. Since then, it has been recommended that disciplinary action be taken against IDT CEO Tebogo. Macpherson was asked by the CEO has not yet been fired or arrested.
The one thing, if I may, that has astounded me during the IDT scandal is not so much the questions as to the conduct of the IDT, but to continually repeat false narratives to delegitimize the investigation into the IDT and cover it up. And I think that has really, really worried me as to why that took place among so many political parties.
South African bank West Rand Limited has reported a 10% rise in annual earnings, enabling it to absorb the impact of a further $154 million pre-tax accounting provision linked to UK motor finance claim. Now, last month, Britain's Financial Conduct Authority, or FCA, proposed a redress scheme for consumers with motor finance compensation claims following the Supreme Court ruling estimating the cost at between $12 billion and $24 billion. South Africa is in talks with China automakers to encourage them to invest in local production, with one manufacturer showing strong interest in building cars locally. Now, Africa's most developed car manufacturing hub is at an inflection point, with a drop in domestic output and a surge in imported vehicle, mostly from China. Competition is intensifying, meanwhile, with the likes of Toyota and Volkswagen vying for market share against electric vehicle producer BYD, as well as Chery, Great Wall Motor and Beijing Automotive Group BAIC. And finally, Mosito says it will raise the tariffs on automobiles from China and other Asian countries to 50% in a broad overhaul of import levies the government said would protect jobs. The Economy Ministry says the moves, which will increase tariffs to varying degrees on goods across multiple sectors, including textiles, steel and automotive, would impact $52 billion of imports. Now, according to a document from the ministry, the tariffs will impact countries that do not have trade deals with Mexico, especially China, South Korea, India, Indonesia, Russia, Thailand, and Turkey. Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 508, and Botswana is 13 pula 25. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 42, and in Zambia it's 24 kwacha 08. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 42. Russia is 84 rubles 33. India is 88 rupees 10, China at 7 yuan 12, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 51. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,632 and platinum at $1,381 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $67.37 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Mmatsheko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Heritage Month is a time to remember where we come from and celebrate where we are going. Channel Africa. Catch us on DSTV channel 802. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It has gone exactly 12:42. This is Africa Update on Channel Africa. One of the key stories that we are bringing you this afternoon is a court ruling, a judgment by the Constitutional Court in South Africa. And it also is our question for you today. So the Constitutional Court has delivered judgment on whether men can assume the surname of the woman after marriage. So the question we're asking you today, as a man, would you take your wife's surname? And as a woman, would you demand that your husband take on your surname, and why? We do understand that perhaps there are some, cultural idiosyncrasies and just cultural differences that might inform your decision. So let us know. I think one cannot assume because nothing happens in a vacuum. We are all individuals with certain backgrounds, and maybe there are communities where indeed it is the husband that takes on the wife's surname. Let us know. You'll find us on X, Facebook, as well as Instagram. On X, we are at Channel Africa 1, and Instagram. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. You're also welcome to send us your voice notes via WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. Looking forward to reading your comments.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
So South Africa's Constitutional Court has delivered judgment on whether Section 26 of the Births and Deaths Registration Act is unconstitutional, and this is insofar as it unfairly discriminates on the basis of gender by failing to afford men the right to assume the surname of woman after marriage. SABC News reporter Kenny Mapanga elaborates.
As we've seen that the Concord has confirmed that declaration of invalidity, apologies, by the Free State High Court against Section 26 of Section 1A to C of the Births and Deaths Registration Act. What that means is that men can now assume the surnames of their wives. There is no rational, justifiable reason why a woman has to assume the surname of her spouse, her male spouse, but he too cannot assume that spouse's or the female spouse's surname in the alternative. So essentially that declaration of invalidity has been suspended for 24 months. That gives Parliament at least 2 years to remedy that defect. But the couples concerned, that is Jana Joran, Henry van der Merwe and Jess Donnelly Bornman and Mr. Bornman, have successfully vindicated their constitutional rights to equality and dignity by ensuring that they have the choice, and now many others, to take on their wife's surname should they do so. The analysis that the Constitutional Court employed was the impact that this kind of legislation has on women, and they found that it was an insidious impact because it is rooted in patriarchy and enforcing those colonial gender norms. It has no legitimate government purpose but to place women in an inferior position in marriages once they assume their male spouse's surname. They found that this legislation has a severe impact on women in marriages and does not serve a legitimate government purpose. So, of course, they have successfully confirmed that declaration of invalidity. That means now all in society have a choice, if they choose to do so, to take on the surname of their female spouse. And of course, now women are not placed in a position where they have to lose their identity in marriage. They now can be placed in a position where, should they choose to make their surname the family name, that is now possible because legislation will now support it.
That is our question for today. And just looking around at how different countries around the world are dealing with this. In Kenya and Uganda, the Registration of Persons Act doesn't restrict surname changes by gender, and men occasionally adopt a wife's surname, particularly among urban couples or where the wife's family name carries social or political weight. So that's in Kenya and Uganda. And if you're listening to us from either Kenya or Uganda, or you understand the norms and the practices, let us know how this works for you, and if indeed this has been beneficial for your own societal construct. In Nigeria and Ghana, the The statutes allow any adult to change their name by deed poll or statutory declaration, so a groom can legally assume his wife's surname. It's not common, but some couples who value equality or want to preserve the wife's lineage do it. So nothing unique really to South Africa regarding this. And this is the latest judgment coming out of the Constitutional Court regarding this. And if you look in other countries, the United States and Canada, for example, men can adopt their spouse's surname, but they usually need to request it on the marriage license or go through a name change process, and this varies by state or by province. So let us know what your practice is in your neck of the woods, whether you're on the African continent or listening to us from the diaspora. You'll find us on X and Instagram at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook we are at Channel Africa. Also keen to hear your voice notes as well. The number once again is +27 63 406 9126.
zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Vuto lakusowa kwa simenti likupitirira ku Malawi ngakhale kuti boma linapanga mgwirizano ndi makampani ena aku Zambia kuti azibweretsa mdziko lo simenti. Nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba yadzudzula makampani ena kuti akubisa simenti ngakhale kuti boma likumawapatsa ndalama yakunja kuti akagule kunja ndi kubweretsa simenti ku Malawi. Ndipo George Muhango tili naye pa line apa kuti atifotokozere zambiri. George, bwanji komanso vuto la simenti linamba liti?
Inetu ndili bwino, ndipo vuto la simenti ku Malawi kuno linayamba miyezi itatu yapitayi. Sakupezeka mu mashop amene amagulisiramo komanso kuti makampani amene akupanga simenti amene akupanga ochepa kwambiri, monga mudza kunena kuti ndalama yakunja kuti ayitanise katundu amene amathandizira kuti apange simenti amene ikusoweka.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It has gone exactly 12:50 Central African Time, just 10 minutes to 1 p.m. Now there has been yet another strike on the global Sumud flotilla. Activists say their aid convoy has now been bombed twice in Tunisian waters. The attacks cast doubt on Israel's insistence that it does not obstruct humanitarian groups bound for Gaza. Botlale Pele has more.
The global Sumud flotilla, a group of 20 boats, set sail from Barcelona to Gaza, carrying medical kits and food parcels. The flotilla, which has been involved in a blockade for almost 2 decades, was attacked again by a drone in the early hours of Wednesday morning. The incident resembled the previous one on the Portuguese-flagged vessel family. Tunisian officials have denied any drone involvement in the first incident, but an investigation is ongoing. The flotilla's mission is to break the blockade and aid the Palestinians in their mission. Flotilla member and activist Saif Abu Keshek tells us what went on.
We received the same report of yesterday, a suspicious drone that fired on our ship. We have seen some videos that were shared on social media that explains the same context of yesterday.
The group is adamant no other government has the motive to target them, and Saif insists that the attacks are designed to scare them off course and silence their message of solidarity with the Palestinians.
There is no other government that is interested to stop such a civilian movement except the government of Israel. So this what they happened. It's a violation of Tunisian law, violation of civilians, attack on a ship that carry humanitarian aid with civilians on board.
Israel claims it does not target civilian aid missions, but Flotilla's activists argue that recent bombings reveal a different story. In 2010, Israeli commandos raided the Mavi Mara Mara, killing 9 activists, sparking global condemnation. Despite the risk, Abu Keshek believes they shall sail regardless of the challenges they face.
Unless there are changes in the weather or technical issues in on our ships or certain situation with our participant that does not allow to sail, there has been absolutely no change on our determination. Everyone we spoke to, they are determined to continue being part of this mission.
Amongst those on board is South African activist Mandla Mandela, who says that their purpose is peaceful and that their only weapon is solidarity.
Coming all the way from South Africa to participate in this is really a joy to once again be able to set sail and go and break the blockade in Gaza and end the siege, which has been going on for the past 18 years.
Members of the Global Samud Flotilla have vowed to continue with their mission and commitment to sailing toward Gaza, despite attacks on their boats. For them, as the flotilla presses on, it's a voyage now that not only carries just aid, but a message of perseverance. I'm Kalipele for SABC News.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Now, as the world marked Suicide Prevention Day on Wednesday, the 10th of September, South African paternal mental health advocate Kim Vermaak says it's crucial to shed light on the silent suffering of mothers and the urgent need for support. Globally, suicide is the leading cause of direct maternal deaths between 6 weeks and 12 months postpartum, responsible for 39% of such deaths. South Africa also observes Suicide Prevention Month in the month of September. Tutongobeni compiled this report.
World Suicide Prevention Day is an awareness day observed annually on September 10th in order to provide worldwide commitment and action to prevent suicides with various activities around the world since 2003. Meanwhile, South Africa has taken a step further by observing suicide prevention for the whole month of September. Suicide remains a leading cause of maternal death, accounting for 1% of maternal deaths between 2014 and 2016 in the Southern African nation. Kim Vermaak, author, book coach, and paternal mental health advocate who specializes in helping people navigate the often overlooked journey of postpartum depression, says it's crucial to shed light on the silent suffering of mothers and the urgent need for support to prevent them harming their babies or themselves.
Now, postpartum depression can, at its very, very worst, and it's very extreme, it can lead to the mother harming the baby up until the point of death. We call that infanticide. Infanticide is when someone has killed the baby before it is a year old. And in South Africa, we've got the highest rates of infanticide in the world. On the other side is that the mother might not actually kill the baby, but she might hurt the baby, or she could hurt herself. Now, what happens is when a mother has hurt the baby and she feels very overwhelmed, or the father has hurt the baby, then there is a lot of guilt that comes into it. And then they start saying things like, this baby would be better off without me.
Vermaak has blamed commercial media for putting a lot of pressure on new parents as they promote images of happy-looking new mothers, which is sometimes not the reality of new mothers or fathers. She says this leads to depression episodes.
Now, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. However, the media sometimes will make it look like, and when I talk media, I'm talking about commercial media with magazines where they have happy mummies that are nursing the babies and everything seems wonderful. And when we compare ourselves to what we think is the perfect mother, that is when we can actually have even more depressive episodes, because we're feeling like we are just not worthy. So when a mother starts feeling that, or when a father starts feeling that, there is a tendency to sometimes withdraw from the baby.
Now, when you withdraw from the baby, you're breaking the bonding process between the mother and the child and the father. And that has got long-term consequences. In fact, research shows that early childhood traumas can spike the incidences of you getting postpartum depression as well.
Vermaak says communication and support is at the heart of ensuring that new mothers and fathers don't experience the sad emotions.
You know, when I was writing my book, Taming the Monster, which should be released quite shortly, I really realized the power of communicating with other people. I've come across a number of fathers and mothers who just didn't have a name for what they were experiencing, and they really struggled at a time that they didn't need to, because they could have reached out for help. And for anyone who's actually listening, I want to say, if you know someone who is in your family, or maybe at work, or maybe in your faith-based community, who's just had a child, dig a little bit deeper. Don't just look at it and say, okay, well, maybe they just need space. Find out if they need something and be proactive.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobene in Johannesburg.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
That brings us to exactly 12:58 Central African time. There is a comment that I'd just like to share with you that came in on our various social media platforms, and this was regarding the M23 being invited to attend the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs dialogue that was being held. And a South African DIRCO, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, not happy about their presence here. And we had a conversation a bit earlier on with the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public International Affairs Professor Anthony van Nieuwkerk. And the summary of our conversation was the fact that M23 have not been, classified as persona non grata or have been banned in South Africa. And they went through all the legal processes of acquiring their travel documents here. Here is a message that comes in following that story. It comes from Bojangles, who says, useless at being/doing good, useless at being bad too, useless being useless, the ruling party. So says Bojangles, and that's his, twist on all of that. Well, that's how we come to the end of Africa Update for you today. It's been an absolute pleasure sitting in for Lulu Gabu, and she'll be back with you once again tomorrow. From myself, Tami Ngubeni, and the entire team at Africa Update, you have yourself a splendid afternoon further. It's gone exactly 1 p.m.
SABC News.